Today, we're going to break down one of the most brilliant and, frankly, terrifying military victories of all time, the Battle of Lake Trasimene. This is the story of how a single general didn't just beat his enemy, he made an entire army literally vanish.
All right, let's jump right into the chaos. I want you to picture this. It's the morning of June 21st, 217 BC. You're a Roman soldier, you're marching along the shore of this kind of peaceful-looking lake in central Italy.
And then, all of a sudden, the hills above you just erupt. You hear trumpets blaring from your side and from behind you. Thousands of Carthaginian soldiers. You've got Gauls, Iberians, Africans. They're all just crashing down on your column. There's nowhere to go, no room to form up for battle, not even a second to think. Order just completely dissolves into this desperate, bloody fight for your life. And your commander, Gaius Flaminius, gets cut down right in the middle of it all.
So that's the big question, right? How in the world do you destroy an entire army in just 3 hours? I mean, the Romans at Lake Trasimene weren't just defeated, they were swallowed whole. So let's hit rewind and figure out exactly how the Carthaginian general Hannibal pulled off what might be the most perfect ambush in history. To really get the trop, you have to first understand the man who said it and the massive war that he was fighting. So let's set the scene. We're at the end of the 3rd century BC. The Mediterranean world is basically dominated by 2 superpowers. You've got the Roman Republic and the Carthaginian Empire. Now, they'd already fought one long, bloody war, and in 218 BC, a second, even bigger one kicked off. And the mastermind behind Carthage's whole plan? This guy, Hannibal Barca. Instead of doing the predictable thing and invading by sea, he did something nobody thought was possible. He marched his army, and yeah, that includes war elephants, all the way from Spain over the Alps and straight into Italy. The Romans were, to put it mildly, completely shocked. And here's the thing about Hannibal. He wasn't just some brilliant strategist on paper. He had already beaten a Roman army, and beaten them badly at the Battle of the Trebia. So this set the stage perfectly. You've got Rome on the back foot, totally alarmed, and its commanders are getting impatient. They're desperate for a big win to restore their honor. And this is absolutely crucial. Hannibal didn't just understand tactics, he understood psychology. His next move wasn't really about military marching, it was about manipulating his enemy's mind. So what does he do? He takes this unexpected route and marches right past the Roman army led by Gaius Flaminius. Then he starts burning and looting the countryside. This was a massive taunt. Flaminius's entire job was to protect these lands, and watching them go up in smoke was a public humiliation he just couldn't stand for. So of course, he gave chase. Hannibal was basically leading the Romans by the nose, and he led them to the perfect spot, right on the north shore of Lake Trasimene. You see, the road there was just this narrow strip of land, with a lake on one side and a whole range of hills on the other. It was a natural funnel, a natural killing ground.
And this next part is just pure tactical genius. Hannibal marches his army all the way through this narrow pass and sets up a camp at the far end, right out in the open. This was the bait. He needed Flaminius to see that camp and think, aha, we're catching up to them. You have to appreciate how meticulous and incredibly risky this plan was. In the dead of night, Hannibal marched most of his 50,000-man army back along the hills overlooking the path they had just taken. A nighttime march on that scale is insanely difficult to pull off quietly. But they did it, without the Romans ever knowing. And then they just hid and waited. So the morning of June 21st arrives. Flaminius, totally eager to catch Hannibal, takes the bait. Hook, line, and sinker. He orders his army to march right into that pass. Their vision probably made even worse by a thick morning mist rolling off the lake. So you've got this massive Roman column, 25,000 men, just snaking its way into this narrow death trap. And then, bam, the trap is sprung. Hannibal's cavalry charges in and seals the exit. His light troops and his Gallic allies pour down from the hills, hitting the Roman flank. And his best troops, his veteran African and Iberian infantry, block the entrance. The Romans were completely boxed in. The result was a complete slaughter. In just 3 hours of absolute carnage, 15,000 Roman soldiers were killed. A lot of them tried to swim to safety in the lake, but they just drowned under the weight of their own armor. Another 10,000 were captured or scattered. In fact, a group of about 6,000 men at the very front managed to fight their way out, but they were just rounded up later that day and forced to surrender anyway. The entire army was effectively erased from the map.
I mean, just look at these numbers. They're absolutely staggering. Rome lost 15,000 men. Compare that to Hannibal's losses, which were somewhere between 1,500 and 2,500, and most of those were his less experienced Gallic allies. It was one of the most lopsided victories in all of military history.
And believe it or not, for Rome, the nightmare didn't even stop there. The shockwaves from this defeat spread all across Italy and shook the Republic to its absolute core. Just a few days later, Hannibal's forces hunted down and wiped out the entire 4,000-man cavalry force of another Roman army that was on its way to help. When news of these two back-to-back disasters hit the city of Rome, it triggered a full-blown panic.
But maybe the clearest sign of how devastating this was is what Rome did next. The Republic, a nation built on aggressive warfare, was so terrified of Hannibal that they appointed a dictator whose entire strategy was to avoid fighting him at all. This Fabian strategy was basically a policy of just running away and harassing from a distance. It was a clear admission that they knew they couldn't beat him in a straight-up fight.
So why are we still talking about this battle more than 2,000 years later? Well, it's because what Hannibal pulled off at Lake Trasimene was something truly special.
Look, armies get ambushed, it happens, but the total destruction of an entire large field army by another army in a pre-planned ambush, that's something that military historians see as a once-in-history kind of event. It's really never been done again on this scale.
And you don't have to take my word for it. The legendary military historian Basil Little Hart put it pretty bluntly. He called it, simply, the greatest ambush in history. Which really just leaves us with one final, fascinating question. The risk Hannibal took was just immense. I mean, think about it. One slip-up, a noisy night march, a single Roman scout in the wrong place at the wrong time, and his trap would have completely backfired. It makes you wonder, what is that razor-thin line that separates military genius from sheer, terrifying audacity?